What's up, everyone? Today we are going to be talking about dark mode. We got our super simple website open up here. We got our dev tools open, and we're going to be turning this crazy bright default white web page into this dark, alluring, comforting of the eyes web page. All right. We're going to talk about dark mode and the underlying principles behind adding this theme to your website. We'll talk about how to ensure that the theme persists, as well as how to automatically set it up with the default settings on your system, because we live in a time where dark mode is really popular. All of the major tech companies and major websites that you visit have dark mode themes, and it's your choice whether you want to include it or not. But we'll talk about this layer by layer and make it so that it's easy for you to add it to your project. Ultimately, dark mode or any other theme preferences is all about user experience and trying to improve or enhance a user's experience on your site. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so here we are. We're starting off with a blank screen, completely white. If we look at the elements, nothing really here, an empty HTML page. What we're going to do is we're going to switch over to the code editor, and we'll get started with the index.html. What we're just going to do, since we're in VS Code, that's what I'm using as my editor, we just have some auto fills that we can use. We'll just get a basic doc type HTML. You could see the meta characters. We don't necessarily need this for this particular project, but just to make our life easier, I'll go ahead and use that. I guess to make my life easier. Anyways, we'll put the title as dark mode theme. We have a main.js. You can see it's empty, and we have a main.css. So we need to link these in our index.html, and we can go ahead and do that here. We'll go ahead and add a link, and rel style sheet and the href, since it's in the same folder, we could just go ahead and say main.css, and also we will add a script tag. And for the source, we can go ahead and, just like with the other one, main.js. Not CSS, main.js. All right. And we also want to go ahead and set this to defer. What defer means is that it's going to load later. So it'll wait until the HTML document finishes loading, and that's when it's going to load the page. It's almost equivalent, or it is equivalent to if we were to put the script tag at the bottom of the page like this. But rather, we could just keep all our script tags at the top, but we could just add that defer attribute to the HTML element or to the script element. That way we can have it load later. All right, for the body, I believe we had an h1 tag. And for now, we could just go ahead and put title or dark mode, I guess. We had a paragraph tag, and I think there was some lorem ipsum. We'll go ahead and say lorem 20, and we'll wrap that. You could see it there. I think I had an h2 as well. Second header. And finally, we had a button, and the button, I believe, said click me. So we could go ahead and save this, and we'll navigate back to the HTML page and see what it looks like. Hit refresh, and there it is. So we have dark mode, lorem ipsum, second header, and click me. So let's make sure that our CSS and our JavaScript file are properly linked to our HTML document. So let's go back to the text editor. So we can go ahead and save this, and what I want to do here is I'm going to add an ID to the button, and this will be a dark mode button. We'll add that ID. We'll go to the main here, and we'll just to test this out, we'll put dark mode button, and we'll go ahead and give it a background color of pink. That's generally what I always use for whatever reason. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to the main.css or the main.js, and we will add a button here, document.query selector, and we're going to go with the, since it's the only button on the page, we'll just use button for now. But once we have that element, I want to go ahead and add an event listener, and that event listener is going to be a click event listener, and we're going to add a function here. And for now, what I'll do is we'll write this function below. Now if you're wondering why, we'll just say button click. If you're wondering why I'm writing this function below the line where I'm declaring the add event listener, this is due to JavaScript being able to hoist function declarations in this form. You could check it out on the MDN docs. Really helpful to know, be aware of what's going on. But we could go ahead and put button click here as the function that we're passing in whenever there's a click event taking place on the button. And inside the function, we'll go ahead and put console.log. And as tradition states, we will put hello world. So if we go back to our index.html, we could see that we have linked the main.js file as well as the main.css file. So let's go back to our HTML page and see if everything is working as it should be. Alright, so click refresh. Right away we see that the button is pink, and if we go to our console and we click the button, we see hello world. So everything's looking good. We got a good setup going on right now, and we're ready to start building out the actual dark mode theme. Okay, so what we're going to be doing now is we're going to first set it up so that we can click the button and it's going to change from this light background and dark text to a dark background and some light text. And that's inherently what's going to be the basis for our dark mode. So let's get going back into the code editor. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is we need to set up some basic styles. Now, the way that I'm going to structure the styles is through the body tag. If we look at the HTML element, we can see that we have the main HTML body tag, and everything else is sitting inside of the body tag. What I want to do for the styles, and what I advise from my own personal experience, is for you to base things off of the parent element and edit the child element in reference to the class for the parent element. So here's what I mean. We'll go ahead and delete this, and the first thing that we'll have is we'll have the body tag. Now, in the body tag, there's defaults, right? We know that the color of the page is white by default and the text color is black. Well, what if we have a class sitting on top of the body tag? So let's say if we had dark mode. So we have the body element, but dark mode. And if we go here and we say that we will give it a background color of black, and we could have a text color of white. So essentially what we've done, we've flipped it. We have the defaults that already exist, but now if the body element has the class dark mode, these are the styles that's going to apply to it. And we could test this out and see very quickly. If we go ahead here and we go to the body element and we say class equals dark mode and save it, when we go back to the HTML page, we should see the colors invert. Let's check it out. Hit refresh, and there we have it. We have our dark mode essentially. Now there's a lot more to it, but we have it working so far. But how do we apply this class to the page or to the body element when we want? Well, we're going to attach it to the button. That when we click the button, it'll add the class or remove the class, and that essentially is how we're going to be applying the dark mode theme or removing the dark mode theme. So let's go back to the code editor. Now, if we look here, we don't want to set this manually. We want to just leave the body tag as it is. And in general, aside from IDs or class names, you really don't want to, and these are inherent IDs or class names, you really don't want to be doing too much in the HTML document. You want to add the functionality to the JavaScript document or to the CSS document, CSS being mainly intended for styles. So if we go here and we go back to our JavaScript, we can go ahead and we'll add a body. variable, right? We want to get the body element from the document. We'll do the same thing, document.querySelector, but this time instead of body button, we'll say body. And this is really safe because we only really ever have one body. It's poor practice to not have one body. It's required. So we have the body element, and what we're going to do is in this button click function, we know that it runs every time the button is clicked. We're going to go ahead and check. And what we'll do here is we'll check the body's class names, or the body's classness list. So what we'll say is if body.classList dot contains, and the one that we're checking for is dark mode. Okay, if it contains it, then what we want to happen here is we want to remove it, because this button's essentially a toggle where when we click it once, it turns it on, click it another time, while it's already on, it turns it off. It's just switch on, off, on, off. So in this case here, we are removing dark mode. And in the other case, we're going to be adding the dark mode theme. All right, so if else, very simple logic. So body.class contains dark mode, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to say body.classList.remove. And what are we removing? We're removing dark mode. And on the flip side, if we have an else, and we just say body.classList.add, and we're adding the dark mode theme. So let's see if this works. All right, so if we refresh the page should turn white. There we go. But when we click the button now, we should see that the class is being added. So let's look at the elements, and we see here the body does not have any class names. But when we click the button, we see that the class dark mode has been added to the body element, and obviously the styles have now been applied, body.darkmode. When we click again, it's been removed. The class no longer has anything here, and the body has the default styles being applied. So we have the basic premise for turning dark mode on and off. But now what happens if we refresh the page? So it's dark mode, and I click refresh, and it turned back to white. Well, what happened? Why didn't the dark mode persist? Well, this is a problem that we need to address, as well as things related to the system settings. We're going to talk about that as well next, but we have the basic premise in place. We're applying styles based on the existence of a class on the body tag. So what about our system, right? We live in a time where dark mode is super popular. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and countless other websites and apps all have dark mode. Now, I'm a Windows PC user, so I know that the system automatically, it gives you the choice of dark mode. I'm not sure about Mac, but I would imagine in some form or the other, you get the same type of experience. Now, how do we get that automatic preference of dark mode applied to our websites? Well, in recent years, it's become a media feature similar to responsive websites. Well, now we can automatically apply automatic themes, theme preferences. And we're going to do this in the CSS. So let's navigate to our CSS document, and then we'll go ahead and add these unique media features to our document instead of the classes. So if we go here and we look, we have our class, dark mode, right? Body.darkmode. We're going to go ahead and comment this out for now. And what we're going to do instead is we're going to add add media feature. So the syntax for this, normally we would use something like max width, and we would say maybe 500 pixels. And inside of that, we would go ahead and list our body tag, and we'll provide some features. So we'll say at max width 500 pixels, the body should have a background of such and such, right? Of white or pink or gray or whatever. In this case, we're not going to be using the max width. We're going to be using a special syntax for this specific media feature, prefers color scheme. And the options are light and dark, if I'm not mistaken. And so inside the body tag, we could go ahead and we could say something like this. So the background color for the body tag. In here, we'll say it's going to be pink. And the color of the text is going to be, we'll say purple. Now, my system by default, or not by default, by my choice, is set to a dark theme. So because we have this CSS here set for when the system theme is light, we should actually never see this. If I go ahead and I duplicate this and change this to be dark mode, right? When the prefers color scheme dark, that's when we'll see the styles. And so what I'll do here is I'll go ahead and set it to black, or let's go with navy blue. Maybe navy, and the color will go back to white. Now when I save this and we refresh the document, this is the color scheme that we should see by default. Immediately when the page loads, we'll get these styles being applied. Not these ones, but because my system has dark mode as its preferred theme, your system might be different, so just keep that in mind. Here we go. So when I click refresh, boom, here we have the styles being applied. Now, again, I chose to have navy as the background color, navy blue, but the text is white. But when I click on the button, nothing happens. The class is being applied, but remember, we removed those styles from the CSS. So again, this is only going off of the system preferences. And so what we'll do next is we'll combine the manual options as well as the system defaults in order to give the user the full choice. What they prefer ends up staying and is remembered. Because right now when we refresh the page, I refresh it right now, refresh it again, it stays with the system default. But previously when we clicked and changed it, when we refresh, it didn't persist. It didn't stay in dark mode or light mode based on what we chose. And so we're going to bring it all together next. Now that we have the automatic themes, we need to change things back and go back to the basics because the class is actually where we want things to exist. The CSS themes are great, but in order for us to properly apply the functionality we want to work with the defaults as well as the manual override, we want to move all of that into the JavaScript and not in the CSS. We just want the styling to be in the CSS. So let's go back to our CSS document. So in here, we're actually going to get rid of this. We'll comment it out for now. And we'll go back to working with the body.dark mode. But again, we're going to be taking this class and we're going to work with the media, but we're going to do all of that inside of the JavaScript. So what we'll do from here is we'll actually take this prefers color scheme and we'll use prefers color scheme dark. And we'll go inside of here, and basically what we'll be doing is we'll create a variable, or we'll build a variable called media query list, but we'll just go ahead and set it specifically to dark mode. For the sake of consistency, I should probably use camel case. I'm a little bit mixed. I don't know what I prefer. Anyways, in this we'll call the window object, and inside of that there's a function called match media, and we can go ahead and paste in this prefers color scheme dark. And what will be returned will be a media query list object, and in that object there is a property called matches. And if the feature that we passed into this match media function, if it's true, then matches will be true, and if it's false, then matches will be false. So we can go ahead and you could see this here, dark mode and matches. There it is. There's the property. It's a Boolean, true or false. So we have that set up, and the last thing, or the other thing that we need for this is we also want to add an event listener. Add event listener, and what we want to do is we want to set it to change. Now, whenever this feature changes, so if we change our system settings, we also want to reinitialize our theme. So here we'll add another function called Init Theme, and again, because of JavaScript hoisting, we could put it at the bottom, but it'll still be applied here. but we'll run this. So every time that the system changes its theme, we want to try and reinitialize the theme. So we've solved this problem. Now, the next step that we need to take is we need to allow for the dark mode to persist, right? The manual button. So when we click the button here, now let's change this name to toggle theme, and again to toggle theme. Instead of just applying the class alone, what we want to do is we want to store that class that we've selected, or that theme preference, in our local storage. Right? We could use session storage or even pass it in as a cookie, but for this case, it's probably easier for us to just use local storage since it's such a small piece of data and we're not doing anything else with it. So we can access that by going here and saying that local storage dot, and for this we'll store it as theme and we'll say equals light. Now remember, in this part of, if this if statement passes, we're removing the dark mode theme, right? Or rather, we would say we're switching to light mode. Now, since we're doing a toggle, we're going ahead and we're saying switching to light mode. And vice versa here in the else, right? We're going ahead. Oh, I didn't have the comments set up nicely there. We're going ahead and we're going to be saying switching to dark mode. So we could do this and then bring it down. Oh, got Arabic. Accidentally pressed Alt Shift. Switching to dark mode. All right, so, and if we go here, we will set the local storage dot theme equals dark. Now, I'm going to show you a diagram here which basically covers the principle that we're looking at. How does this work structurally? So if we go here and if I go to my images, we could look at the initial load diagram. And basically what's happening here is when the website initially loads, it will check the local storage to see if there is a theme stored inside. So if we never click the button, there would be no theme stored, no manual override stored. And so it would just use the system's default theme, right? The one that you chose in your system preferences or in your phone's preferences or the app, etc. But when the local storage, when that theme property exists, it will use the theme, right? It will use the local storage theme for the website. If it doesn't, it'll go with the system preferences. And if there's no system preference set, it will just go with the default for the website, right? And in our case, the body has a default style of white, a white background color, and the text is black. So this is the hierarchy. It first looks at the local storage, which is the override. If that doesn't exist, there's no property. Then it will look at the check system preferences, and then it will look at the website app default. Now that's for the initial load, which we'll write. The other thing we need to consider is the toggle theme. When we use the toggle theme, when that's manually changed, all it will do is it'll check, is there a local theme? Is there a theme stored already? If there isn't, we're going to add one, and we're going to set it to the value that we want, which is the opposite of what's currently the theme. If it's light mode, then our new theme override will be dark mode, and vice versa. But as soon as we click that button, we have now added a theme property. So our website will not operate on system defaults. It will operate on what we have manually chosen. Now we can add a reset button to return to defaults settings, and that's what you see many websites offer. There's a button that you could click that says restore defaults. But currently, we're just going to do the manual override. So again, We have that already set up with the local storage.theme equals dark, local storage.theme equals light when we click the button, when we toggle. Now we just have to do the init theme. So the first thing that we're going to go ahead and check, and we're going to go ahead and see local storage.theme. If it exists, then we're going to do that. Otherwise, we're going to use the media query list dark mode, and we're going to check if it matches. So we can go ahead and do this to make it a bit simpler. So the first thing we'll do is if local storage.theme, we are going to have a const called the theme, and it's going to equal, based on the local storage.theme, we'll use a ternary operator. If it equals dark, okay, then our theme will be dark mode. Okay, actually we could go ahead and just to make it clear, we'll say theme class. Or just say class name. Okay, it'll be dark mode, and if not, then we could say light mode. We could realistically have it as blank, but perhaps we want to have some unique styles that are light mode specific, or add more modes, I guess, to it. So for now we'll just add light mode, but inherently we could leave this as a default. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and say body dot class list dot add, and we'll pass in that class name. And now we have it if the local storage exists. If the theme, we've already manually overridden the theme. And now in this case here, if we haven't done that, then we want to go ahead and for our class name, we will use the system default. So if we go to media query dark mode dot matches, and remember the match that we used was dark. The match that we used was dark. So matches is going to return true or false. So if it returns true, that means that we're using dark mode. So we just need to have the class be dark mode. And if it returns false, then we know that it'll be light mode. And just like above, we'll add the body.classList dot add, and it's the class name. All right. So once again, with this light mode, I suppose we need to consider here that if we're adding the light mode, then we should be removing the dark mode. If we're adding dark mode, we should remove the light mode, and then vice versa. That's something that, so here we would need to remove dark mode and then add light mode. That's something that we need to consider if we do go about it that way. But beyond that, that's basically it. So if we go back to our styles, we have it set up with body.dark mode. Background color is black and it's white. And what we can go ahead and do here is we could say body.light mode, and we could set the background color. So previously we'll go ahead and we'll just set it to pale goldenrod, and we'll set the color to being just black. But now what we should see again is by default, when we initialize the web page, oh, I forgot here. Yeah, so the last thing that we need to do is we want to run this function as soon as the web page loads. That's the last thing that we're looking to do. And so what we can do is on the window function, on the window object, we can add an event listener. And this event listener is called DOM content loaded. Now, normally people run the load event. This is actually the preferred event trigger. So I know most people will use load, but this is actually something that's not really encouraged for us to do. And yeah, DOM content loaded is the better choice. But we'll go ahead and have the init theme. So as soon as the HTML content is loaded, then we can go ahead and run the init theme, and it should apply the styles that we want to be applied. And the reason why we don't need to have the declaration, body, button, all of that being inside of the init theme is because we set the loading for the script to defer. So this will the script will not run before the HTML DOM content exists. So we'll always be able to find the body and the button. So we'll save this and let's go to the web page and check it out. So this is what we had before. If we refresh the page, we can see that we're automatically in light mode. Now remember, the style was pale goldenrod. It looks kind of gross, to be honest, but you know, it's working. Now what we want to look at is we want to look at the application, and we could see here that the file, the theme was set to light automatically. Right, the theme was set to light automatically. This is actually not what we want to do. So let's go back. Okay, so this needed to be encapsulated. So there's a slight bug. I needed to encapsulate this in parentheses in order for it to run correctly. Prior to that, it was returning back false. Now it is returning the correct. So by default, when we initialize the theme, okay, and there is no local storage set, we can look here and we'll see, refresh, and we see that it's in dark mode. The application, if we go to click on our local storage for this web page, there's nothing stored here. But as soon as we click the button, we've toggled the theme, and now we have a key here called theme, and the value is light. And so if we refresh the page, refresh the page, refresh the page, each time it stays, right? The theme has persisted through refreshing, and we can close the browser and come back to this exact same web page, and we'll find that the theme will continue to be light. However, if we switch it now it's at dark. And once again, if we refresh, same thing happens. But if we look here, the class dark mode, switch, it applies light mode, switch, dark mode. Now, again, the thing to consider here is that this is permanently going to be affected by manual settings. It's no longer affected by default settings because you've changed it. In order for us to go back to default, we would have to run something like to clear the local storage of the theme. We could run a function or something, or you could just go here and you could say delete, and it will return to the system default. So if we look here and we go dark mode, I don't think it'll change when I delete it. Yeah, it doesn't, but now it's not stored here. And if we refresh, it goes back to the default that matches the system settings, which is dark mode. So that's basically it. From here, you can go ahead and extend it out. If we wanted to style the button, what would happen is we would go here, and in this body.dark mode, we would continue with that extension, body.dark mode, and we can go ahead and say button or use the ID. And in this case, we will go ahead and we could say background color, and we want to say that the background color is going to be, I don't know, Peru, and the padding will be 1 rem all around, and the font weight will be bold. Right? We could just continue to, we could add specific styles, and we look at the web page now, and now we refresh and we see those styles being applied. However, in the light mode, it's not being affected. So this essentially, what we're doing is the light mode or the dark mode is applying styles to all of the other features, right? It's applying styles to all of the other features. Now, to extend this, I would highly recommend using something like SCSS, like Sassy CSS or SAS. I believe that's the library. I would highly recommend doing that because it makes it a lot easier for you to actually nest the styles. In an example, instead of actually having to write all of this, we would just take the dark mode, and inside of the body.dark mode, we can go ahead and add this button style. Now, in regular CSS, this is an error. This is a syntax error. You're not allowed to do this, but in SCSS, this is permissible, where you could nest elements and it will end up producing something that looks like this. So I say that just because it makes it a lot easier. In terms of general styles, you can go ahead and you can have regular attributes for the body. So for example, if you wanted to remove the default margin and padding, you can go ahead and do that. And then when it comes to specific styles related to the theme, that's when you can go ahead and put them inside of light mode or dark mode. So that's about it for this video. If you have any questions, please let me know. Love to hear your feedback in the comments down below. All right, take care. Until next time. Peace.